How often do we feel exhausted with everything that is going on in our lives? How often do we want to hide from everyone and everything? Do at times we feel so tired, or maybe we have this emptiness and hardship that we're feeling and we could hardly function? Or maybe at times we lack motivation and it's difficult for us to do our daily activities and we want to do nothing. If we feel any of this that I mentioned, then very likely we are exhausted. And today we will look at the emotion of what does it mean to be exhausted from biblical and psychological perspectives, and how we can deal when we get to that position in our lives. Because psychologists define exhaustion as an extreme fatigue. And extreme fatigue usually happens as a response to stress, to family issues, to mental or physical effort. And at times it has to do with juggling multiple commitments, or maybe if we have inadequate sleep. But if it lasts for a long time, it's so important to see a doctor and to rule out different sicknesses, maybe what we could have, and maybe the symptoms that we could have. It has to do also with diabetes, allergies, hypothyroidism, infection, depression, anxiety, and the list could go on of different issues. However, we know that also people in the Bible, many of them were exhausted too. Doesn't matter how young or how old they were, whether they were warriors or they were ordinary people. For example, in Isaiah 40, verse 3 and 4, we read, "Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted." It's interesting that at times we maybe think, oh, young people cannot be so tired. They cannot be so exhausted or weary. They're young. But we see that that is not the case. Anybody and everybody can be exhausted because it depends on what's going on in their lives. Another example we see in Judges chapter 8, where Gideon's 300 soldiers were exhausted. We also see in 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 10, where we read, "But David went on with the pursuit, he and 400 men. 200 stayed behind, too exhausted to cross the Wadi Bezer." Warriors were too tired to fight. These 200 warriors were too exhausted to move forward. And maybe at times we also feel like them. We do not want to cross whatever we need to cross, or we just cannot move forward. And we do not want to do anything, and we have difficulties even doing our everyday chores. It is very important for us to accept that exhaustion affects us negatively. We cannot just treat exhaustion as a simple fatigue, because if we will do that, then we will be stuck with it. We need to address the root issues of exhaustion, and we must ask ourselves different questions. We could ask ourselves, do we study too much? Do we work too much? We should ask also, do we have too many decisions to make? Or maybe we have too many obligations. Do we continue thinking over and over what's next, or maybe what happened in the past and how this could change and how we can solve those issues? And if we answered yes to any of these three questions, then very likely we have this cognitive overload, and that is why we feel this exhaustion. I will ask you three more questions. Are we in continuous maybe conflict with people? Or maybe do we take other people's burdens? Or are we constantly stressed out and feel that there is no relief? If we answer yes to any of these three questions, then very likely we are experiencing emotional exhaustion. Also, we must remember that prolonged or chronic stress could lead us to be exhausted. This is because the prolonged stress can drain us physically, emotionally, and mentally. And our bodies just say, enough, I give up. And that is why we do not have any more strength to fight the stress and the stressors that comes our way. And many times this exhaustion manifests by sleep issues and irritability, restlessness, anxiety, loss of concentration, crying spells, and we feel just burn out and it's hard to move on. However, there are ways we can deal with exhaustion, and we will look at some ways how we can get out through the biblical and psychological perspective. However, we have to be intentional. If we think our exhaustion just will be like this and will disappear, that will not be the case. So sorry, but you will have to do some things in order for that exhaustion to decrease and disappear. And that applies the same to me. There are times I'm so exhausted and I do not want to do anything. So this applies to me. If this doesn't apply to you, then I am preaching to myself. Because one of the first way we can deal with exhaustion is to see if and how we can eliminate the stressors in our life. And one of the ways we can do, let's delay non-urgent things we need to do. Let's delay these non-urgent decisions that we have to make. Another way we can do it, to decrease to-do list per day. Maybe we should pray and ask God, show me what I should not be doing right now. What are not my priorities are. Because I want to do what you want me to prioritize. The second way to deal with exhaustion is to challenge ourselves. Let us challenge our self-imposed pressure and these pressure patterns that we have. And many times it could have to do like, let's look, I have to do this today, or can this wait for a longer time? Can this be left behind maybe for the next week, for the next month? Let's give ourselves time or extra time to do things. We also could do by asking other people for help and sharing how we feel, because we do not have to do everything on our own. We know from Galatians chapter 1 verses 10a, although it was written in the context of gospel, but this applies when it says, am I now seeking human approval or God's approval, or I'm trying to please people? Because if we're trying to please people, we will be exhausted. The third way to deal with exhaustion, let's change the environment. Let us go outside. Let's go for a walk. Let's appreciate God's beautiful creation, which also means that we can stay away from the screen time, because the screen time also at times makes us exhausted. We think it does not, but it does. And going outside, experiencing the sunlight, it's important for us because it increases our serotonin levels. We know from Psalm 23 verses 2 to 3a, it says that God, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. So when we go to see God's creation, when we lie down in this green pasture, so we stay beside still waters, our exhaustion will be decreased. The fourth way to do it's important to have a work-life balance, which includes especially to keep Sabbath. If we don't take Sabbath, we will get burned out. That's guaranteed. And we will be exhausted. In Hebrews 4, verses 9 to 11, we read, so then a Sabbath rest still remains for the people of God. For those who enter God's rest also rest from their labors as God did from His. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through such disobedience as theirs. I'm thankful to God for these Bible verses because it says it will not happen automatically. We have to make this effort to enter God's rest. And Sabbath is God's rest. So we rest in God. And when we rest in God, we also trust Him. And the fifth way, as Christians, we must focus on God. For God doesn't grow weary and exhausted. And He also is never tired of us when we go to Him and His presence. He wants us to go to Him always, and He gives us strength, as we read from Isaiah 40, verses 28 and 29, where it says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless." Thanks be to God for this. But do we believe that He gives power to the faint? Do we believe that He strengthens the powerless? Because only when we believe it and we go before God's throne, He will renew us, He will restore us, and the more time we spend with God, He will fill us with His presence, with His strength, with His endurance, and this exhaustion will leave us little by little. So may we lean on God and not on ourselves. Amen.